Are just about to broadcast now here in Zoom. Folks are going to begin trickling in. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the 8th episode of Startup Showdown presented by Tech Council Ventures and TechUnited. Thank you for joining us. We've got an excellent episode today focused on AR and VR with 3 incredible startups that'll be pitching and 3 absolute experts in the space that are going to be providing their feedback, asking the tough questions, and really getting into what these companies are doing today. So quick ground rules, and then we will get right into it. This is being recorded. It'll be available on the Startup Showdown website later today or early tomorrow morning. So if you want to share it with a friend or rewatch any of the action, you'll be able to do it on our website, techunited.co. If you have questions for these startups, and I hope that if you're tuning in, you have questions as you're hearing their pitches, put them in the Q&A. I'll be moderating those and asking them to the startups. If you want to say hello, if you want to connect with anyone else that's tuning in today, put those in the chat. If you want to wish Will a happy birthday, put that in the chat. He's taken some time out of his special day to join us, so we extra appreciate him for that. If you want to just say hello, talk about what's going on right now in the world, chats for that, questions in the Q&A. If you've joined us before, you know the drill. If you have not joined us before, here's how things are going to run. We're going to have 3 pitches today from Oculomotor, LearnRoll, and Soar. Each company is going to have 5 minutes to present their slides and pitch, and then another 10 minutes to receive Q&A and feedback from folks on screen and from you, the audience, moderated by myself. And quite frankly, that's the gist. We're going to have a poll at the end to vote on the startup winner of today's episode. And then we will see you all on September 17th for our 9th episode focused on real-world data and evidence. So before we get into the first startup of the day, which will be John, I would love for each of the investors joining us today to just say a quick hello to our audience. And Jim, maybe we'll start with you since you're our familiar face.
Sure. Thanks, Jasmine. Tech Council Ventures is an early stage investor. We're delighted to be here. We invest throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, anywhere from as little as $250,000 to $500,000 up to, say, $3 million into promising growth companies. And we're excited to hear about from each of the entrepreneurs this morning.
Excellent. Thank you. David?
Hi, I'm David Haynes. I'm a partner with Front Row Fund. We're a very new fund based in Jersey and Pennsylvania. Similar to Jim's fund, we do early stage companies focusing on tech-driven enterprises. Again, anywhere from the 250 to $1.5 million range.
Okay, excellent. And Will?
Hi, I'm Will Lutz, and yes, it is my birthday. I'm the general manager for entrepreneurship at the New Jersey Innovation Institute, where I run the VentureLink co-working space, office space, and incubator, although today I'm here in my capacity as an angel investor.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And if you haven't been to his space, when we can go back, or if it's open right now, it's an awesome place to be. Will was one of the only people I met in person when I joined TechUnited before we went into quarantine. He might be maybe the only one I've ever met other than Jim. So thank you all for joining us today. Startups, we're going to get into your pitches shortly. Appreciate you all joining us. We're going to start with John at Oculomotor. John, I'm going to put it right over to you to share your slides. You've got 5 minutes. When you see me pop back up, that's your little 30-second warning. And we're going to get into it. Thank you again for everyone joining. Hi, Esther, NJ Tech Weekly, big supporter. Thank you for tuning in, and we will start with John right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you everybody for joining today. Before I start sharing my slides, I actually want to do a little activity with everyone. So if you could all hold 2 fingers up in front of your face like this, one far away from your face and one very near to your face. You got to use 2 hands like this. Kind of looks like this from the side, this from the front. Now what I want you to do is look from your far finger to your near finger, and your far finger again to your near finger again. You'll notice 2 things when you do this. First is when you look at your far finger, you'll see 2 of your near finger. Your vision essentially doubles. The second is when you look from your far finger to your near finger, you'll notice your eyes. They feel like they're crossing inward. Maybe not that gross, ridiculous looking thing that kids are doing all the time and their parents are telling them not to do, but a minute rotation of their eyes. You do this, as it turns out, all the time in day-to-day life. Whenever you look from anything far to near, you are essentially crossing your eyes. Let me share my screen really briefly. Hopefully everyone can see this. So unfortunately, roughly 1 in every 20 people, I'm not sure how many people are on the chat today, but safe to assume a few, suffer from a vision disorder called convergence insufficiency. Convergence referring to that inward rotation of the eyes, and insufficiency, an inability to do that. Symptoms include blurry and double vision, headaches, dizziness, and nausea when performing those everyday tasks that are closest to our face. Reading a book, looking at a computer, looking at our phone, the things that we do all the time in an everyday office setting, especially now that we're working from home, these are really problematic symptoms. But even more problematic is when you're a child and when you're learning how to read for the first time. If you just see double every time you look at a page in front of you, that's absolutely untenable. Now, fortunately, there's a paradigm called vision therapy, similar to physical therapy, where a series of repetitive exercises are conducted under the supervision of an optometrist in this case, designed to get those eye muscles working again, that eye-brain kind of dynamic going. Unfortunately, they're indescribably boring. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner video over here, this is the most commonly prescribed mechanism of vision therapy in the country. It's called a pencil push-up. You hold a pencil far away from your face and you bring it closer to your face until it doubles. You do that for 3 to 5 minutes, 3 to 5 times a day for 8 to 12 weeks, and you're a kid who's like 8 and you have an attention disorder. That's not going to happen. So what we do is we gamify therapy. We make it engaging for the patient. That looks a little something like this. In the top left corner of the screen, this is an early prototype of our game, and you see the patient's eyes right below the screen. If you watch, in response to some visual stimuli on the screen, you'll see the patient right about now crossing their eyes inward, and they're doing this naturally. The very thing that makes VR work, that makes it so volumetric and immersive for the rest of us, is actually really hard for patients with convergence insufficiency. So we finely tune the mechanics of the headset and the software that we're presenting to present really, really easy visual stimuli that elicit these eye-crossing movements. You can see in the top right corner, we're doing some analysis on this too. We have eye tracking hardware inside of these headsets, and they are classifying movements as good, bad, somewhere in between. And what we're able to do with this is ride the bleeding edge of a patient's ability level. If you're doing really well, we make the therapy harder. If you're not doing so well, we make the therapy a little bit easier. And by riding the bleeding edge of their ability level, we actually show really phenomenal efficacy using this software. Briefly, we did a 9-subject clinical trial. In the bottom left corner, you'll see some data from a binocularly healthy person like you or I. Essentially, the gray traces are their eye movements. And you can see they're all very repetitive, they're concise, they're accurate. And in the middle, near the blue line, you see someone with convergence insufficiency. Their eyes are all over the place. This is why they have double vision. They're not crossing their eyes repetitively and accurately to meet the movement of a target. However, after supervision in our software for 12 sessions of about 30 to 40 minutes each, that's indistinguishable from the control on the left. After just a few hours in our therapy, that same convergence insufficiency patient was cured, not only of the problems with the movements of their eyes, but also of all their symptoms, their headaches, their double vision, their blurry vision. That was all gone in 7 of the 9 patients, and a statistically significant improvement in the remaining 2. We think this is a really, really exciting area of opportunity, both in the therapeutics and the diagnostics. Really briefly, I'd like to hit you with some vital statistics. We've done a venture funding round. We've also completed an SBIR award recently. We have an application going out for a phase 2 in the next week that's really doing a number on me emotionally right now. We are a team of 4 co-founders. We have 6 employees as of right now. Most of them are New Jersey Institute of Technology graduates and undergraduates. We're targeting go-to-market in Q1 next year for one of our product lines. We have a few others that I'd love to discuss with you at more length given the opportunity later. We have 1 US patent. We have a few international applications pending, as well as a few other US patents pending. And we just completed our first FDA pre-submission meeting. So we're really, really happy with the progress that we've made so far. Other than that, this is just a really exciting area. We use the things that make virtual reality fun for healthy people, and we provide therapy and diagnostics to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to enjoy it. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Excellent, thank you. We're gonna start right off with Jim. Thoughts, feedback?
Okay, you can hear me now, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so John, I think that's I like the idea. I think what you're using this technology for makes a lot of sense, and to your point, it's a lot better than the status quo. It makes it more fun. I guess just a few questions from a business side. You mentioned the regulatory, would this be a 510K?
Yes, we are planning a 510K right now.
And so at I think you said 9 patients. So what do you need to validate clinically in order to get credibility among your target?
Sure. So as far as the FDA is concerned, actually a very small number. We really only need to hit between 25 and 30 patients. So this is good for us. We can run a very small scale study. And that's also enough to publish and we think help convince our customers that this works.
But what do you need to show with that? That is equivalency? There's equivalency?
Oh, actually, no. We don't actually need to show equivalency to the current therapy at all. We just need to make a claim that our device provides a therapeutic effect. And then as long as we back that up with evidence that there is the effect that we described, then we're fine. Of course, to our customers, we would like to confirm that it does just as well or better. The current state of the art is around 75% efficacious. The 7 of the 9 patients roughly translates to an equivalent of the current standard of the art.
Yeah, okay. And from a pricing perspective, can you talk about your pricing versus what the current landscape looks like, and also reimbursement, if you could touch on that as well?
Of course. So I'll start with reimbursement first because this is a very difficult area. Traditionally, vision therapy is not a reimbursable market for a lot of large insurers. Some do, don't get me wrong, but because of this, the majority of optometrists that practice vision therapy don't accept third-party payers. They are a cash-only practice for vision therapy specifically. So this is something that we've worked into our model a little bit. We'd like to get into the reimbursements eventually, but for now, not disrupting their model too much. As far as your first question, which was regarding, jog my memory, please, Jim. It just slipped my mind.
Just competitively, John, just curious. Yep.
Sure. Yeah, so we do have a couple competitors in the marketplace. Optometrists on this type of equipment, they have a very set purchasing schedule. Every 3 to 5 years, they'll spend between $10,000 and $20,000 on a big new piece of tech equipment. So that's the kind of range that we're targeting.
Got it. And I guess just the last question is, what do you anticipate the market size of this? And you mentioned that you're targeting optometrists. Could you also pursue the pediatric ophthalmology community? Are there, even some PCPs?
Absolutely. So as far as the diagnostic technology that I just described to you, our target market is very, very niche. It's a subset of the roughly 40,000 optometrists in the United States who practice vision therapy. It's between 3,000 and 4,000 optometrists. Now, for our diagnostic technology, which we're developing hand in hand with this at this point in time, that is applicable to a much wider variety of markets, not just optometrists, but also ophthalmologists, as well as occupational and physical therapists, and most interestingly, school districts in states which are more increasingly mandating this style of testing for pediatric students across the state.
Yep.
Thank you for your questions, Jim. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Excellent. Will, your feedback?
Yeah, Jim stole my good questions. So some feedback for you, John, is I think it's from the perspective of someone who teaches and mentors and does a lot of that. The day in the life problem, I think, is really compelling that you have at the front, and I'd like to hear more about that to hook in my interest. It's the presentation comes across a little academic for me, and I'd like to get that emotional connection there. The pilot test graphs, those 3 graphs at the bottom, were really powerful. In fact, if I were to redo that slide, I'd remove the text up above and make it just those graphs. They were really phenomenally powerful. And then I'm just going to make this just really brief feedback and not really a question. I'm sorry about that, because Jim already got to it, which is I wanted to hear more about your go-to-market and your business model. How do you make money? How are you going to get your product in front of the right people? And and Jim sort of already asked that, so I'm not going to make you repeat it. So I'll just leave it at feedback and not too many questions.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate the feedback, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Will. David, your thoughts?
Sure. I have the same thoughts as Will. Jim took all the questions.
Jim's going last next time.
The first thing that struck me is it a permanent solution, or is it something you come back for?
That's a phenomenal question. So we find that 1 year post-therapy, the majority of roughly 90% of patients don't need any remediation at all. So they're cured in essentially perpetuity, yes.
Okay. What about your projections? What are you looking for? I mean, what's the revenue look like?
Sure. So like I was saying to Jim, there are two sort of distinct markets here. The therapeutic is small. It's very niche. However, it is the core technology that we developed first. We are passionate about it, but we acknowledge it's you know, maybe a couple hundreds of millions of dollars total.
Okay.
The diagnostic market is essentially limitless. There are so many states that are starting to mandate this testing. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of school districts across the country. Essentially every optometrist who's near that school district, physical and occupational therapists. The projection that we work with is around $7.6 billion per year. And I could, of course, share the math with you on that if you're interested in discussing it more.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. What about then? That kind of distribution? What's the cost going to be to a school or to a small practice?
As far as the cost to acquire or the cost that we plan to sell at?
Acquire the product.
Okay, so as far as acquisition goes in the optometric market, we're very, very fortunate in that one of the founders of this area of vision therapy is one of our co-founders. His name's Dr. Mitch Scheiman. We have very close relationships with the large professional certifying organizations for optometrists. They all go to the same conferences and read the same journals. Our acquisition cost for optometrists is actually phenomenally low for a medical device. As far as school districts go, this is an area where, unfortunately, we are a small team, and I don't think I have the expertise to answer your question at this time. We'd like to get there, but it's a little difficult and a little fuzzy for us right now.
It sounds like you would have to establish yourself with the professional organizations.
Absolutely.
What did I add? And then last piece, we kind of touched on what is a little more specifics on the use of proceeds if you on the raise. Where's funding going to go?
So we're not actually doing a fundraising round right now. We're just working on our SBIR award. The vital statistics on the last slide are what we've already raised. Sorry. So I'm not actually pitching anyone for anything today. I'm just saying hi. And if you're here, in the next year or so when we are doing a fundraising round, that's what we're working with.
Okay. Great.
Okay. A couple questions from the audience. You just mentioned that your customer acquisition strategy is largely that they all go to the same couple of conferences and read the same journals. And if you want to go to marketing Q1 next year and those conferences are not actually taking place in person, what is the potential impact on your either close rate or just ability to close optometrists in a time-sensitive way?
Jasmine, is that your question or an audience question?
It's my question.
That's a phenomenal question, Jasmine. This is uncharted waters for us. Now, our initial target customers will be the people who are closest to us within our pre-existing network. We've done like hundreds of customer interviews. We have collaborations at some of the largest optometry schools across the country. We target the people who we know first because we can get on the phone with them and directly sell to them. In a post-COVID world, I don't know. A lot of the conferences have gone online. There are opportunities for us to attend them and present them. But as you well know, the cool thing about virtual reality is putting it on your head for the first time and feeling how it really works. So it will be a little bit difficult for us to sell these sort of things virtually.
Got it. All right. And have you started already talking to those folks that you know that are connected to you and gauging their interest, or even talking about maybe even like pre-ordering for Q1?
So we haven't talked about pre-ordering for Q1, but in the very closest of the close network, we are working with some beta testing sites. And I'm not going to tell you how many or who they are, but yes, we're getting there.
The inner circle. Okay, cool.
The inner circle, yes.
And Esther from NJ Tech Weekly had a question about if you're able to share who your current investors are.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with New Jersey Health Foundation and its affiliate, the Foundation Venture Capital Group. We also work very closely with NJIT. We're all NJIT alums, and we work in the Venture Link incubator that Will runs.
Oh, okay, cool. Will, did you know John prior to joining this webinar?
Yeah, I'm his landlord. Yeah, I'm John's landlord.
And you know what he did? He tried to raise my rent during COVID, okay? So, hey, you brought up landlord, Will.
I'm taking this offline for you too. You can discuss that on your own time. But for now, I'm going to get into the next pitch of the day.
Absolutely.
John, excellent job. We're going to bring you back on screen for the final voting towards the end of the webinar. And for now, we're going to bring Shushmita back on screen to share her pitch for LearnWell. She should be getting on any second. Here she is.
Hi.
Hey, you all ready to go?
Yeah, sure. So should I share the screen first?
Yep.
And
You have 5 minutes.
Okay. So hello, good evening, and sorry, good afternoon, the judges and the audience. I just wanted to say how you're doing in COVID, and I'm sure some of you have become virtual mentors as well as mentors for to your children at home. I am too. I am a mother as well as I was teaching my daughter some science, and I was asking her, like, do you know who a scientist is? And you know what she replied back to me? She said, do you know who the YouTube science influencer is? Well, I did not. So that is exactly what my company is. Learn, Grow, Immerse is about how we think, the millennials think, how the Gen Z think, and we are building immersive solution in AR and VR for them. So I'm just going to go very shortly about what my company is through some of the slides that I have. So I'll just give a very brief introduction about the market opportunity, the roadmap, the product, and the team that we have. So what are we? Who are we? We are basically, like I said, we have been building this solution so that we can understand how the millennials think and bring to market a SaaS-based platform. We are targeting a $5.2 billion edtech as well as a health tech market. And it is being built by a team of technologists. All of us have our industry people, advisors, and our customer feedback. So what is the problem that we are tackling? We are essentially tackling the formal and informal education space, mostly the post-secondary education, as well as the digital health, like patient education. So the market that we have is around the 5.2 billion, and our market, which is essentially health science, health education and life sciences education, is around 300 million. So the product strategy, we have two different kind of product strategy. One is the market fit. So we went to different kind of schools in person, and we did pilot testing over 18 months across a lot of post-secondary education students. We went to doctors, we went to different kind of adults, and it was a very success story for us. So we have vetted our product. We are Oculus ISV official partners. As well as we've got a lot of support from AVIS, STEM, and NJIT, to take us to the next level. We have an excellent team here. Most of us have 25 years industry experience, including me. We all come from different backgrounds. We are all technologists, VR developers, gamers, education folks. The business model that we have is very simple right now. We go for a very single user model. And as we mature as a company and we go forward, we are planning for an enterprise as well as a subscription model. As I said, since we are building VR and AR, visuals make more sense, like reading a Harry Potter book and seeing a video. Here's a short video about our company. And my last slide is about the funding ask. We are trying to raise a SAFE fund, which is around $1 million for a post-money valuation. It's an early valuation, of course, around $6.7 million for a target 15% equity. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us.
Thank you. We're going to get into the investor feedback and audience questions. Reminder to the audience to put your questions in the Q&A. And I'm going to mix things up and start with Will this time so that Jim doesn't steal his thunder.
Okay. So my first bit of feedback, I still don't know what it is. I think I might know what it is, but I didn't really get it until that video at the very end. I got lots of stories about who you were approaching, what market you're going after. Can you tell me what it is?
Yes, it's basically, like I said, we are empowering our children and the digital health learners. So essentially, we are building educational and health-based solution. For example, a CME medical education or pre-medical education that would be supplemental in the school using AR and VR technologies.
I'm going to move on because I still don't think I understand, which take that feedback for how it is, that is something that you can figure out and work on. Whether you have the right answer or not kind of doesn't matter. That's something that you probably want to address. You talked about market sizing at one point, TAM, SAM, and SOM, which as somebody who teaches, I understand those concepts. What I don't know is what is the TAM, SAM, and SOM? I know what those terms are because everyone has those three terms when doing market sizing, but what are your markets? How do you define TAM, SAM, and SOM?
Exactly. So right now, if you see VR and AR educational market, especially whether it is health education or the edtech market, if you look at the entire market, because VR adoption has not happened, so it has really gone from 46% earlier. But post COVID, we are expecting, the projection for the next 5 years, it's going to about 70%. So that is the total addressable market that we have, and it's our market because we are focusing on a very specific education. That is, we're focusing on providing health education as well as life sciences education for post-secondary sector. So that is how we have calculated our SOM, which is around 20% of the TAM market and the SAM market that we have.
Okay. And then my last thing is for the fundraise slide at the end. This is a bit of advice. I want you to go talk to somebody like the three of us on here at some point about tightening that up. Because when you described a safe equity, the whole point of safe is to avoid a valuation.
Right.
So when you say safe for 15%, it's counterintuitive, and I'm not. It's something that you need to fix as you're talking to more investors.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good advice. I think I agree with you. I think we should be very open and not keep those clauses. So yes, definitely. Yeah. I think I take your advice. I'll do that.
That's it for me.
Thanks, Will. David, ready?
Yeah, ready. I'm going to agree with Will, Shazmita, that I wasn't really sure exactly what you guys are doing, what the actual product was. That was my first note. So are you actually developing content? Are you providing a platform or a software?
Yes, it is both the platform and the content, because currently the market doesn't have too much of content. So since it's just a 5-minute pitch, in the 10-minute pitch probably I could have explained more in detail that how the content as well as the platform. So the platform allows content developers like a teacher or educator to actually build their own content. But we are initially starting with creating our own prepackaged content.
Okay, that would probably be a good place to start. In that opening, this is who we are, would be helpful. Where are you in your product development then?
The product development, we are for the Oculus Business Quest, we are pretty close to some of the, the VR AR portions is pretty complete. The only portions that we are a little concerned about is the AI portions, because we have some back-end AI. Because we are a little concerned about the privacy, especially if you are taking it to post-secondary schools, as well as if you are taking it to the health sector. So that is one of the integration portions that we are waiting for. But as such, the product is pretty much, it's totally MVP ready, tech tested. We've tested with even the Oculus Facebook team. We've provided reviews to them. So yeah, and then of course we have piloted it for 18 months. So we've got really good customer feedback, and they have vetted the product, including the educators and the other doctors or the health and nurses that we've shown it.
What's the model going to be? What's the business model?
The business model initially is we go with a single enterprise, single license model, because we are really a bootstrapped startup right now. And having come from the industry, it is not we can definitely go to a lot of enterprise customers, but we don't really have the ability to support it at this point of time. So to start with a single user model and then go to an enterprise or a subscription model once the platform is more mature.
So would you be selling or licensing the content then? People would subscribe to?
Yes, both the platform and the content, yes.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, and Jim, your feedback?
Yeah, thanks, Sushmita. I think it's definitely has that wow factor. There's no doubt you learn better when you see images and video, at least for me. And I think as well that it makes sense to target life sciences and healthcare. I actually tore my meniscus, and so yesterday I was online looking at that type of thing to get better educated. But I guess that raises the question in my head, which is there is a lot of content that's free. And so just curious, and even for pay, I mean, this is not an industry that's new. I mean, obviously the advent of VR and AR is, but I'm just curious how you differentiate and how you view that competitive landscape.
Yes, I think AR VR now is used by different domains, whether it is retail or health or education. And even within the education and health, I see two different ways that VR will be looked into. So one is, of course, the native VR, the advanced VR that we are trying to create, targeting the business headsets, which has, the experience is definitely very experiential and more immersive. But there is also the web VR, which also we are trying to target, which we have started because the technology is again not mature. So essentially, the technology companies who are building these are also immature, in beta, we are also in beta. So we are definitely trying to look into pivoting some of these solutions. Like, for example, the Oculus Go that we had one of our solution in that has been sunsetted. And, we are trying to move all our health-based applications into a web VR. So which allows you to use a browser, like Mozilla has just come out with a 2.0 version. So allows you to use VR through web. So I think that has the potential to reach online to a lot of people, not only in US, but across globally.
I see, got it. So technology hopefully can provide some of that differentiation and the timeliness to make your content relevant.
Exactly.
So just so I'm clear, so the ideal would be a medical school or a college biology class or somebody, as you say, that's post-secondary that is learning, because there are products, as you know, or you may not, but that are targeting, for example, surgeons, right? So the ones that are out practicing, and that's a different category. From a economics perspective, and I know you're still commercializing, but how do you envision gross margins, your pricing, revenue model? Can you talk about that?
Yes, so I think, like you mentioned, a lot of the companies which are already doing VR, and we are trying to keep our pricing very competitive and low because, right now our first phase is really to go to those companies or those hospitals or university teaching places where the VR program is mature. So they do understand, that the devices will change, new devices will come in. It will be, cheaper devices, and we do understand that. So we are ready to make sure that, we can be ported across different platforms. So yes, it is competitive, and definitely we are trying to, keep the market pricing. We go to store and see, okay, what is a very similar kind of an app that we have, they are doing surgery, we are trying to do, CME or a Medicare education. So how close are we, So definitely, yeah, we have to compete.
Yeah. So gross margins would be what, 50%? Is that fair to think that might be?
No, I think for VR, AR, it will have to be lower because, it's still a growing market. It's still, I think, 3 to 5 years, it's going to pick up. And, it's not easy. So definitely the margins have to be not more than 15 to 20%, I would say.
I see. Okay. And then thank you for being here, Sushmita. Are there other key people that you're collaborating with on this? And to that end, are there other skill sets that you would bring in with capital that you would raise?
Yes, we definitely need more people to come in. Any company from a startup, to become a company needs definitely needs a lot of people. I'm really thankful for all the support that you've got till now. Through AWS and AGIT and the other companies that we have right now. But we definitely need to get more experts and more people in the company on the development side, on the marketing side, on the sales side. And also on the support side. I think we need to be with the customer, and he has to be happy with us and the support that we provide to him.
Yeah, agree with that. Great. Well, great job, Sushmita. Thank you for participating.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jim. I've got a question here from the audience, and this individual must be reading my mind. It was a question I was going to ask if nobody asked it, So Christian asks, is there a market here for autistic children and adults, considering a majority of children on the spectrum are visual in nature, especially related to education, where they oftentimes face greater challenges?
Yes, I think this question has been asked to me so many times, and I'm not a researcher, so definitely as far as the reports I've read, from a lot of the universities which are carrying out research on this, this is something that is really working, and yeah, I definitely think there's a huge market for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Christian. I mean, it just strikes me, Sushmita, that could be a niche that maybe is off the mainstream, where there's a real need.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I think, yeah, if you get a specialist who can understand and who can, corroborate the research to more into our product, because, there is, you have to look into the privacy also, in these, as well as, to see that whether it is really giving them the outcomes as needed, So that is definitely, I think, it's a combination of a product as well as research.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think all of the investors were getting so granular and really going through everything. Sushmita, thank you. We're going to bring you back on for the final comments. I'm going to have Anthony from SOAR join us for his pitch, which is the third and last pitch of today's episode. Thank you. We'll see you in a bit.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, you're all set. You ready to go?
Yeah, I'll pull up deck real quick. Okay. So company is SOAR. I'll give you like a quick 30 to 60 seconds on it. We're a vertically integrated content creation and distribution platform for volumetric video. So basically what this is true captured 3D content using a series of RGB plus depth cameras. They can be anything from like an Xbox Kinect all the way to like a purpose-built device like an Intel RealSense camera. So historically in volumetric, the cost of creating content is extremely high. Capturing content requires large studios with controlled environments. Right now, companies like Microsoft and Intel are offering those capture solutions at anywhere from $25,000 to $75,000 per day of capture. And then the biggest issue with captured content coming out of those studios is that the file sizes are so large, streaming it is virtually impossible with what comes out of those capture solutions. So what we set out to do from the jump was to reduce this barrier to entry for people to create volumetric content, high quality volumetric content, and then also allow them to distribute it. Yep.
I can only see your PowerPoint screen. I can't see the full.
You can't see the deck here?
I can only, there we go. Sorry,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Appreciate you stopping that there. Yeah, so in volumetric, some of the biggest issues are the file size that also leads to the inability to stream real time. So one of the biggest things that we focused on early from a technology perspective was reducing those barriers. And we've built a series of tools from compression to filtering and this sort of AI machine learning component that'll fill in gaps from a smaller scale capture setup that allows us to stream high quality real-time content over a much a less quality connection, we'll call it. So from there, this talks a little bit about the 5G concept. I know a lot of companies early looked at this problem and said, we just need a bigger pipe. When 5G is readily available, we'll be able to stream volumetric content. It'll kind of open up this world. We approached that problem saying, hey, there's got to be a way for us to do this over current networks. And then 5G becomes gas on the fire instead of a minimum entry point. So a little bit about the product. We've built both the consumer side and the stream side platform. So really the goal is to work with enterprise customers and on a longer term direct to consumer, allowing them to stream any type of volumetric content. So we built a series of tools from the stream side, and then we're working on an SDK right now that'll allow anybody to build on top of that and put volumetric content right in something that they're currently building or a purpose-built app. This is just a quick view of the stream side platform. From a streaming perspective, again, a lot of what exists right now is these large complex studios. We use a series of 3, 4, up to a maximum of 8 cameras versus a Microsoft or Intel that's at a base of 32. And running the system as extremely complex. We wanted to make it as easy as possible. It kind of has that modern Adobe feel, so it's comfortable for creators. Yeah. So then when we look at market, there are a couple of different ways to look at this. We looked at the AR/VR market as a whole. It's growing very well. I think initially it was kind of bogged down by this non-utility based jumping off point, especially from VR. But as we see the deeper use cases in utility, I guess utility-based products for AR, it's kind of helping that. And I think we're positioned pretty good there. So in terms of model, I hit on it a little bit before, but we want to be able to scale pretty well, pretty fast. the approach from an enterprise perspective and some of the early traction that we had kind of pointed us in this direction of controlling the server side and allowing us to hit scale on and give us some pricing power on the cloud provider side as we're distributing. So we handle all of the server side for distributing the content. We can allow you to build on top of that, or you can connect cloud yourself. From an enterprise perspective, we did have a couple of people that asked for that specifically, but for the most part, if we can control that, our model works really well, where we can charge tiered pricing, kind of like we're getting charged from an AWS. And then that tier allows us to, we'll hit the next tier much faster than our clients would hit the tier. We can then pass on savings to the client and essentially price out somebody from entering the market a little bit later. So in this space, in volumetric, there have been a couple of companies, most of them were swallowed up pretty early or shifted toward a large scale capture solution. The compression around real-time streaming has been one of the most difficult problems in this volumetric space. One of the companies that was kind of a quarter of the way through it was acquired by Magically pretty early. I think it was a team of like 4 to 6 people at the time. And it was acquired mostly because of the small scale capture. And they were still on their way to that real-time streaming solution. So right now, we're the only company in the space with that specific capability. I think this is a large problem, and it would be naive to say that other companies aren't working on it. But at this specific moment, that compression piece has given us a tremendous amount of value. Some of the other companies like 8i, Intel, Microsoft, they're focused on this more large scale capture, which to do real time is nearly impossible with the setup that they have. But they're targeting a different market that like not even large broadcasts, but offline content. So with this, I'll hit a little bit on traction and
we are going over a little bit, so I am going to ask you to be just a little aware of the time.
Yeah. So, well, real fast on traction, we've worked with a series of companies from large broadcasts, and one thing that happened in that initial discovery period was we had one of the large tech companies reach out about a couple of customers of theirs that were having this similar problem with streaming real-time volumetric. So they then pushed us, and that end customer was one of the large sports leagues in the US. So we're working pretty heavily with them on a full broadcast solution. But for right now, the core focus is that smaller scale, accessible to masses capture and streaming solution. Yeah, and I'll end there if we're running a little long.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to get right into the feedback from David first. And Anthony, you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen if you'd like.
Yeah, great presentation. There's obviously a huge market. I've been playing in that space for a very long time, watching it evolve, and 5G is going to change everything, I think, for everybody. Can you give me an idea about the scalability of it? Is it have you done a scalability study? Will you be able to handle large volume?
Yeah, so we can handle large volume. I think this goes to a lot of what we've done on the networking side to enable that. We have not done any formal studies, but I can share more information on that if it's something of interest. Yeah, and I would agree. I think the market is huge, and one of the first things that we did was go out and make sure that this wasn't just a niche problem, and we saw pretty quickly from big tech to ad agencies, this is a pretty vast problem.
What about multi-user, like a multi-user mode? Is that something that's capable
of? So capturing multiple people or streaming?
Having multiple users inside of one stream.
Capture space. Yeah, so that's, to this point, hasn't been an issue. I think on the smallest scale capture, you have somewhere around 15 to 20 feet, square feet of capture area. And we're working on improving that too. So if you can fit it in that area and we can train it, it has been successful so far.
Okay. What's on the roadmap then? Maybe start with where do you feel like you are now in terms of is it MVP? Would you consider it production? And what's the feature roadmap look like?
Yeah, so I think when I look at this, I look at two sides of it. One being this smaller scale capture that we can enable anybody to use right now. And then the other side is full broadcast. So like when we're talking about capturing and streaming in real time full sporting events, we're a ways away from there. Luckily, we have some pretty good partners. Intel on the hardware side has been super helpful in increasing range of the cameras and things like that. That's going to kind of speed up the process. But on the smaller scale side, we're just about ready to ship. So we have a series of ad agencies and larger talent agencies and a large music group that we're going to run this initial customer base in. We've done closed betas, so we're pretty confident, and those are going to be paid customers.
Okay. Any IP?
Yeah, so most of our IP is around that compression. We've secured as much as possible without filing patents. Okay. We have a few provisionals, but we have not filed full patents yet.
And what's the reason for that?
Mostly cash, and I think from a defensibility standpoint, scale and the way that our model works, we can kind of price out anybody, and even if somebody were to beat us on compression by a little bit, we'll still have pricing power because of our position with the cloud provider. Yeah, a little bit there, but right now we're on our core compression IP. We're beating Microsoft, which is kind of like one of the standards right now, by like 40 to 60%.
Okay. All right. Last question. So you're getting close to release. What's keeping you up at night?
Well, so we're in a little bit of I guess, so we raised a little bit of money on a convertible note round. We were trying not to take a ton of dilution and get to revenue as quickly as possible because we're in a good position with product. But I'd like to fill out that round. And then some of the large broadcast challenges or day-to-day roller coasters. But for the most part, it's those two things right now.
Okay. I'm sure somebody's going to ask you, but I'll ask it. What are you looking for then right now? What's that?
Yeah, so we've put, we raised no institutional money yet. We've raised under 500K from angels, like a professional athlete, some other angels here and there. And then this most recent note, we have just shy of $250,000 on the note already. We're going to try and hit at least $1 million pretty quickly and close that out. And then I think once we hit that revenue point, we'll take a look at what makes sense for a later round.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Will and then Jim, just knowing we've got about 5 minutes left. Will, it seems like David might have taken some of your questions by your facial expressions, but I'm going to hand it over to you.
I wish he had. They were such good questions. I wish I had them. I'm jealous of the question. I'm gonna move as fast as possible and keep it more to feedback than questions, as I have been doing. Um, for competition, I think that for me, competition was too narrowly defined as just compression of this media. There are other ways to lighten the data load than just compression. The same way I've seen some companies do to VR what SVG did to images on the internet, where it's not necessarily just compression, you're also rethinking the actual media as a scalable vector graphic, sort of a thing. And so when you're talking about competition, for me, I think that's your competition, not necessarily just other compression algorithms. And the other thing that I did want to know, because you keep talking about comparing yourself to Microsoft and Intel and some of these I want to know how you measure compression. How do I know that you're X much better than those competitors? And then the other thing is, and I think I repeated this with somebody else earlier, with the market sizing slide, I felt very general there, where that was like the AR VR market. And that applies to everybody today and every other VR AR company. I want to know what your target market is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
So real fast on compression, how we're comparing is mostly bitrate. And can you achieve real time? So even when we look at Microsoft, they haven't achieved a bitrate that allows you to stream real time. So I guess that's how we're comparing it right now, but there are a couple of ways to do it.
Well, then then I'll change my recommendation, is that when you pitch next to other investors, include that in your pitch.
Okay, cool.
I gotta say that was fair feedback. Jim, I'm gonna close it out with you.
All right, thanks. Well, I know that we're just about at the end. Listen, I just to echo what Will said, Anthony, I also was a little questioning, I guess, how a startup, with limited IP and limited resources can be competitive in a big market, in a fast moving water with the companies like Microsoft and Intel. So I'm sure that I misheard, and I'm sure to the extent that I didn't, that you'll be, getting, once you're commercial, a more focused model. I guess the questions I would ask, how, if at all, is COVID going to impact this? Is there going to be a greater opportunity for virtual, recording? Is there any impact at all on your model?
Yeah, so that's actually, we shifted more into the SaaS heavy model when COVID hit, because inbound was just a little bit nuts. Between the sports leagues, ad agencies trying to find new ways to appeal to customers, it kind of, all roads led to something more engaging. So people that we had conversations with before that were hung up on something, COVID pushed them through that. So we've been pretty fortunate there. And I think it's going to see an increase because of this shift. But yeah.
Yep, good. Well, that's a good thing. You didn't talk too much, and I looked at LinkedIn, but if you could just maybe describe, Anthony, why your background is relevant for what you're doing.
Yeah, so this is my second startup. First startup was in the VR space. We were kind of like we'll call it a Matterport competitor before Matterport was as big as they are. And we were very quickly pushed out of that market as Matterport scaled. So learned a lot of lessons there. Most of the work was on the compression side, but the rest of our team, and this was actually later in the deck, but the rest of our team is experts in volumetric, compression, and streaming. So we have people that have come from Activision, Snap, kind of the whole gamut, and then researchers from Microsoft, Intel, and Qualcomm. So for a while, they were leading the space in research, and that's kind of how we're competitive there, which I think goes back to an earlier question. But yeah.
Yep, good, great. Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you all for your feedback, and thank you, Anthony, and I think John and Shushmita should be on screen again in just a moment. Thank you all for participating in today's 8th episode of Startup Showdown focused on AR/VR. I want to thank you all again for joining us today and for participating, sharing your pitches, providing great feedback and questions, and of course, thank you to the audience for your participation as well. Like I mentioned, this is being recorded. It'll be available on our Startup Showdown website, including more information about the companies and the investors if you're interested in getting connected with them. Everyone knows my emails because I send a million of them about this, but it's jasmine@techunited.co. If you have questions, if you want to see if you can get connected to anyone here on screen, let me know. Thank you again. Like I said, our next episode, September 17th, Real World Data and Evidence. And without further ado, I'm going to announce that today's startup pitch winner was John at Ocula Motors. It was a very close contest, but John, congratulations on winning the Audience Choice Award. Anthony, Sushmita, again, thank you for joining us. Jim, David, Will, always a pleasure to see you all in this virtual setting. And we will see you all soon for the next episode of Startup Showdown presented by Tech Council Ventures and TechUnited. Have a great day, everyone.